You're saying that the nuclear deterrence to a full-blown world war may be overstated because we've had wars actually. It's just that the wars didn't continue into the nuclear side. But the idea that because we have a number of nuclear powers and therefore world leaders will not get into a full-blown war, that idea is fanciful. That it is possible that in spite of the nuclear deterrence, they could go to war.
Well, the doctrine of the mutually assured destruction does not 100% preclude the use of nuclear weapons. All it does suggest is that, given the consequences of a nuclear war, those who have nuclear weapons might be deterred because they also suffer consequences. But there are different types of nuclear weapons. You can have a nuclear weapon that would destroy, let's say, Accra. And you can have a nuclear weapon that would destroy the whole of Ghana, or let's say the whole of the southern part of Ghana. Or you can take out cities. And these powers who have these nuclear weapons have them. In fact, there are tactical nuclear weapons that you can use on the battlefield with limited damage. So we must not rule out completely that because of the deterrent factor of nuclear weapons, no war can happen. And I'm using the empirical evidence from history that the war can start. It will start on a small scale, and then it will start escalating. And if restraint doesn't set in, then it becomes a total war. And any side which thinks that it is going to lose, as we say, if you are dead, you don't know, I mean, you don't care, might then be compelled to use nuclear weapons. So with those remarks, let's come
to Nigeria, yes.
Yes. You see, we must all be concerned. And the concern I have, which I think is a school of thought shared by many Pan-Africanists, is that gradually Africa is being recolonized, being divided, between East and West, between America, Russia, Turkey, China, and so on and so forth. African states are becoming enemies of themselves. And we cannot take out Ghana. By virtue of the fact that we have somehow, I don't want to use very strong words, allowed the US to come and nest in the tree of Ghana and bring material that we don't have the right to inspect and know what is going on, America could draw us into a conflict with Burkina Faso. Because early this year, or was it late last year, when this American Beechcraft or Beechcraft, whatever aircraft was sighted at Paga, and the youth demanded that they will not allow the plane to offload whatever material or cargo they had brought there. At about the same time, there was an attempted coup, an assassination attempt against Traore. And it was reported that 7 or 17 Burkina soldiers, fully armed, had entered Ghana. And yet Ghana, at least messaging-wise, signaling, optics-wise, has positioned itself as, a neutral arbiter, and at least based on good neighborliness, is reconciling with Burkina Faso. This Nigerian question, my colleagues have already used very diplomatic, terms. But clearly, it's a case of Nigeria or its president outsourcing its sovereign security responsibilities to the US. You see it. You don't stop the ISSP and Boko Haram by using drones alone. Because part of the game is control of territory. So if you haven't even got the drones, or you haven't got the munitions that are precision in effect, it doesn't mean that you must go to America to acquire precision munitions, which sincerely Nigeria hasn't got. What Nigeria has are minutiae that are used in open warfare. So you're fighting a conventional enemy, and you go and blast it, explode it, and then everybody dies. But when you are in Maiduguri, which brings us to urban terrorism environment, or you are in Sokoto, you cannot use the kinds of minutiae that Nigeria has acquired from Turkey and China and even Israel. Nigeria started with Israel in 2006. That was the first time it acquired drones. So somehow Nigeria felt that it must, if you like, diffuse the pressure that America was putting on it by saying, okay, you come in and do the work, and if there are any consequences, at least the blame will shift to you. The selection of the target is also equally worrisome. Now, Sokoto in the history of Islam in West Africa, and Nigeria in particular, is not an ordinary caliphate. So why America decided to go and hit Sokoto because of the ISSP, which only started in 2017 and left Boko Haram, which had been around in the Northwest since about 2005, other literature will even say earlier in 1995, Nigeria clearly played into the hands of the US. And again, you mentioned the framing of the messages was also very disturbing. Tinubu was at pains to say that, look, both Christians and Muslims are dying. Indeed, it is not true that only Christians are being killed, even if Christians may be in larger numbers. But I don't think we even have the statistics. And yet America or US President Trump was very insistent that this was a fight against Christians. So he turned himself into a crusader, and then decided to signal that the attack, it is actually worsening, turning the situation in Nigeria into one of religion.
All right. Let's take a breather. I'll come back and we'll wrap up with Prof. Danso and Col Festus Aboagye retired. This is the point of view. It's a geopolitical analysis of where the world is. We haven't even touched on Iran, but there's still a lot to cover. Colonel, before I come back to you, let me give Prof a final thought on the Nigeria and the West Africa situation and a point around security. So, Prof, how concerned should Ghana be about what happened in Nigeria, number one, and number two, the fact that now Kotoka International Airport seems to have become a base for the US. So since they were expelled from Niger, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Chad seem to have become the distributed space for US military accoutrement. How concerned should we be in this country? And how delicate is the balance we are striking between being seen as a US ally, which we've traditionally been, and also the growing importance of China, and of course the issues around Russia and the Sahel 3. How can we navigate this?
Well, navigate we should, but I think Festus has said it all. What was missing was the very fact that we need to read beyond the lines. Since the coup in Niger, the US has always tried to find a way of getting back. They couldn't have just lost their base in Agadez just for that, and then Niger controlling the uranium. So the idea that ECOWAS wanted even to go in within 1 week, that was another insane thing. There was no way, and Festus will tell you that there's no way a multinational force can be mobilized within 1 week. But it was clear, as one Nigerian senator then condemned the whole idea and vowed that the Senate was not going to allow it, was that Trump wanted Nigerian troops to go in as if it were ECOWAS troops, and then Americans would have come in, and then there would be a regime change. So all such ploys to get back at those countries that are defying the norm, the American-led norm, is still there. They would always want places. And as Festus said, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast are ready spots where they will get their lily pads from where they would launch whatever it is, whether it's assassination or whatever it is. Is it not ironical that the so-called flights that we saw in Paga coincided with the coup attempt in Burkina. So we need to look at all these and know that none of us is safe. So if we play ball with the Americans, we are in trouble. Then we allow us. Ghana has a lily pad already, because I know there is this comprehensive defense pact that we signed includes a small base. I don't know how to call it, but they have a small office over here at the Air Force base, I'm told, where we cannot inspect whatever they are doing. We cannot even get near. You cannot even go there and find out what is there. I don't know whether our military intelligence or the NIB or any other of our security agencies know what exactly the Americans are putting in there. And because it is a pad, we can be drawn into any other antagonistic war with any other person. I mean, like Aboagye said, Burkina Faso. We have antagonized Burkina Faso before, when our ex-president was in the US and made it believe as if through Burkina Faso terrorists were coming to Ghana. And it brought a diplomatic spat between us and Burkina Faso. So we can be drawn into anything. And that's why we should be watching. We should be very careful not to allow America to have a military base.
Just a quick one on that. Now that President Mahama is being touted for the AU chairmanship, and with his overshares to the Sahel 3 and his experience, how crucial will he be in managing all of this?
It's very crucial. I know he's a very good politician. Let's be blunt. He's being suspected of being more left, that is, closer to the Russians. This one, I had some conversation in some quarters. The EU, the Americans view him as somebody who must have been supported by the Russians to come to power or whatever it is. So they're dealing with him with suspicion. But Americans come in with coercion and with whatever. They knew Maduro didn't like them, for example. So some pressure was put through all angles, and they will put pressure on our president. What I want him to do if he gets the nod, for example, is to gather Africa as one unit. Let's fight this kind of maneuvering with one fist. But if we begin to make Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, and Ivory Coast in the camp of America, and then others are in some other camp, then we will be recolonized, like Festus said. And the recolonization is ongoing. Only yesterday, it was, Turkey trying to go all around Africa, signing agreements, defense pacts agreements, and building mosques all over. Israel recognizing Somaliland, etc., etc. We need to be very careful. Already the colonization is going on. The Sudanese war is an external war being fought on our soil, for example. So Africa must gang up together and be one, resolute, in the interest of Pan-Africanism. That's the only way we can fight.